Welcome back to Behind Enemy Lines as late as usual. Late as usual. So you guys are used to it now. So you know you're gonna have to start at 7 o'clock. So we're gonna have a very interesting show tonight about Iran, and we're gonna have a couple experts from Iran, born in Iran, military expert, person that was raised, well, as a child, and you'll hear a little bit about her story. So, our first guest is Courageous Voice, who's dedicated her life to exposing the truth about the regime that has terrorized her homeland and the world. She's the author of the powerful new book, The Architecture of Jihad Inside the Ideology, Law, and Global Strategy Driving Islam, Multi Front Expansion. Joining her tonight is a proud Assyrian American patriot, U.S. military veteran, born in Iran, who escaped the regime's tyranny and proudly served this nation in uniform. He's the leader of the Assyrian American Coalition, an organization dedicated to advocating for Assyrian rights and preserving our ancient heritage and fighting for the freedom in the Middle East. So we're going I did this with AI. We're going behind enemy lines to break down for the fall or maybe the fall of the Islamic Republic could really mean for Iran, the Middle East, for America, and the future of freedom itself. How was that?
That was awesomely AI'd.
Yeah, it was. I'm getting good at it.
Yeah, I
I
would I
just
would
yeah,
trade AI in a couple of things I've done,
I
but
just I just got to learn how to read now, and I'll be set. I'll be set. Thank you, you two. Thank you very much. We'll do ladies first. Do a little elevator pitch of your bio, and we'll get into your book as well. But talk a little bit about who you are, what happened, and how you ended up here, and then Sargis will talk about yourself as well and your little bit military background.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be back. It's been a while since I've been on your show. Short, short version of 42 years of my life. Born and raised in the Islamic Republic of Iran after 1979. I was born in 1983, but all of the laws are still applied to me. So I was raised a Muslim girl. With that, I was declared adult woman at age 9, become a troublemaker, was arrested over and over and over for having nail polish, going to a party where boys and girls were dancing in the same room, singing publicly, accidentally showing my hair, all the bad stuff teenage girls do. Went to prison, was lashed, faced all the nice Sharia consequences until my father, who was a sheikh, decided I'm too much of a trouble. So he sold me to a man who was willing to pay the price. And I mean, genuinely pay the price. When I was 13, by the time I was 15, my grandmother from my mother's side, who knew better and was raised during the Shah of Iran, the kingdom of Pahlavi, hired the smugglers to smuggle me out of Iran to Turkey. I went to Turkey. I went to UN back then when UN was still doing UN stuff
Yeah.
and seeked asylum. Got my approval in 6 days, thanks to my grandma putting every documentation I needed in my backpack. By the way, guys, there was a time when you had to prove your story, your age, your name, your background. I was that time. And then waited until I was 18 to come to America because I was a underage girl with no guardian, so I couldn't come in until I was 18. That was a little delayed due to September 11, and I ended up being the second batch of Middle Eastern refugees to come into US through proper channels with I-94 visas, which is asylum seeking visa that never expires. The second batch after September 11 came to America, and the rest of 24 years left to tell you is all history.
Thank you. That was very good. Okay, Sargis, you're on, buddy.
yeah, mine. I got to tell you, that's an incredible story, Annie. And God bless that you
Mhm.
were able to make it through that entire process. Mine was a little bit easier. Initially we came here for a visit with my family, and of course my dad's sister was living here. I've had cousins who served in both Vietnam and Korean War, and when we were here, she convinced them, said, "Why don't you just put in for a green card?" We went back, put everything in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, of course. Then the U.S. Embassy in Tehran gets taken over. We were able to regenerate all the documentation, brought my sisters here, dropped them off, went back again. And then, of course, then me and my mom and brother, younger brother, were able to find a time and means to leave. My dad was stuck there. The government wanted him to work against his community in Urmia, or Rezaie. area. And of course, after a couple of years of refusing to do so, he realized he can't leave. So he took all the lands that he had and turned everything over to the church, signed over basically the pieces of property we had, and was able to leave. So I did come to the U.S. And spent, of course, 20 years in the U.S. military, and of course, 6 years of combat operations, and uh, created the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement on September 11, 2014. The first mission we picked up was helping those Syrian Christians fighting in Iraq and Syria against ISIL and ISIS at the time in both Syria and Iraq, and created the United Assyrian Appeal, and we were able to fund multi-force structures that way through our 501c3 to keep the guys fighting in Iraq against ISIS, and independent. Otherwise, the State Department wanted us to be under the Hashishabi force structures, which U.S. is bombing right now. Now, one piece that is very important there is the fact that when I was young, my mom had been actually selected by the Shah of Iran at the time to represent the Azerbaijan and Sharqi, which is a province basically area for those Americans. And she Christian woman, which caused a lot of controversy. But she went to represent the province. When we went to visit her, there was a little toy I bought in Tabriz, and that little toy was a American military Jeep with a rider behind it, and that's the only toy that I ever brought with me. And that thing's been with me, and I said ever since, if the government in Iran ever changes, that one day that Jeep will return. And
Yeah.
I still have it, so hopefully one of these days I will take that Jeep back. The only other time I've ever shown it to anybody was when we were in a diplomatic mission where I was assigned as a director of Whole Station Affairs with my family, and actually took it with me there. But that's it. Not as a struggle as Anna went to, but at the end of the day, it is a link analysis of our lives and what we had to do just to endure and be able to maybe hopefully make a change in the future of the country that hopefully will be a country that we can affect from the U.S. side.
So that was both very, very impressive background. Yeah. I grew up in off of Cicero on 87th Street and went to grammar school over there. I'm joking. Very impressive, very impressive background. So they were lucky to have both you guys on. So you guys are the experts, right? Instead of us throwing, everyone knows what happened in 1979. I was a senior in high school, and
Wait, wait, Terry, that is I'm so sorry. No.
well,
Everybody does not know. Depend on who you talk to.
yeah.
Some do, some don't. Not everybody. No. I'm
Most
sorry.
people
Go
have the
ahead.
really like whitewashed, watered down version of it.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Well,
Exactly.
so I guess we could do it, and that could take a whole show in itself, right? So why don't you do the elevator pitch of what you think people might not know and get us up to speed? And then I want to talk about your thoughts of what's going on. You know, I guess, somewhat incorrectly based on talking to you guys before the show, the fall of Iran. I want you to talk about what your thoughts are of what's going on now, what may or may not happen, and what the next steps might be for the Iranian people. So Annie, why don't you get everyone up to speed from 79 to current state, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So majority of Americans, especially from that generation, think what happened in 79 was people of Iran got tired of the bloodthirsty dictator King Pahlavi of Iran and his Sabak that was killing all dissidents. So they did an uprising and they decided to overthrow the monarch and come to republic. That's not true. The 1979 was a continuous project of the Ajax project when CIA and partially involved with England MI6 overthrew Mossadegh, but they failed. The coup d'état failed, so they continued that into propaganda through mainstream, which was the only thing that existed, portraying King Pahlavi as the bloodthirsty dictator and Sabak as this horrible, torturous secret police of Shah. But in reality, it was the movement of Red Green Axis, the Marxist Islamists inside Iran that started from universities, familiar, doesn't it? With the
Yep.
students' movement, and then came to about June or July of 1978. Suddenly, Ayatollah Khomeini, who was in exile in Baghdad, Iraq, flown into France, was welcomed by French government, kept there, given all sort of platforms to pitch leadership of this revolution that he hijacked. And then 79 happened, and then he killed all the red people, the Marxist people, turned it into Islamic country. That's a very short version of it because we don't want to take a whole show for it. But that's the truth of it. The
Yeah.
king
So
of Iran was, go ahead.
I hope some of these crazy democratic Marxists heard that part about killing them after he was done with them and then pushing them aside, throwing them out like trash.
Well, he did. I mean, he killed he killed them in bushels, and the ones who didn't die, some of them escaped into Iraq. Of course,
Mm.
we'll go into the stories if it need be on the Mujahideen. But the three big pieces that are on the strategic piece to tie in with what Annie was saying that happened at that time was, of course, the Iranian Revolution. Then you had the invasion of our Soviet Union into
Mhm.
Afghanistan. The other big piece for us here, when it comes to the energy issue, was a 3 Mile Island. So these three were a perfect storm to kind of push everybody away from the nuclear power in the States and saying, okay, we got to still focus on the issue of oil. So the foreign policy for the US at that time, after everything kind of fell apart, as has been stated here, the US really didn't have a good foreign policy in the region. US just took basically a simple 15-inch step, towards the west into Iraq, and then said, okay, we'll fight the Soviet here, since we have lost our footprint as far as Iran is concerned. And that is an important piece because foreign policy aspects of all the presidents that came afterwards were kind of tied to that. And I always have said that U.S. has never had a foreign policy long term for the region, and if it had anything, it was really run by other government agencies that themselves were not even structured the way previous systems were structured to be able to even carry out any type of a mission at that strategic level to have any kind of a effects regionally for the positive for the U.S. So that's why you keep on looking at. It seems like our foreign policy is we go in somewhere, destroy it, and leave. We go destroy, leave. We
Mhm.
go destroy, leave, and we
Yeah.
don't fix anything afterwards, and we deal with the consequences. And sometimes, unfortunately, folks have learned that pattern. So money is made in destruction, not in building.
Mhm.
Mhm. So speaking of destruction, all the destruction that's going on in Iran right now, and people, at least from my perspective, they're trying to uproar, rally protests in January. A lot of them got killed. Doesn't seem like we're seeing much of that going on now. But lots of bombing, taking out the military. I mean, what are your thoughts on like what's happening on the ground, and what are the people thinking? Are they going to start fighting back? And I don't know if you know the answer. Is the CIA or um, Israel helping weaponize these people? What are your thoughts on what's going on right now with the bombing and the people trying to take their country back?
Do I go first?
Yes,
Yes,
always.
yes.
First.
Thank you. Uh, Historically, CIA has never armed the people of any nation that was against the wishes of America, for the record. With that being said, no, CIA is not arming Iranian people. And the reason I say against, United States of America is not looking forward to potential return of Crown Prince Pahlavi. That being said, clearly, loudly, with no filter, no attempt of AI generated video, over 70% of people inside Iran and over 85% of Iranians outside Iran have vocalized their vote for Crown Reza Pahlavi. Therefore, it's pretty dangerous to leave that control to the people of Iran, either inside or outside. So that's for
Can you
CIA.
explain what's bad with him and explain that because so people know.
Because so the reason we had to go in and overthrow his father was because his father and grandfather, for that matter, but mainly his father, at some point he stood up and said, no, no more foreign hands involved in my land. I'm going to make this country great again. I
Mhm.
kid you not. He literally said that. He said, we're going to take Iran to its glorious days. of Cyrus the Great. He cleaned up the house, stopped giving free stuff, and I mean literally free stuff, especially oil industry. And he stopped listening to anyone, US, UK, France, Italy, all of them, Russia. He was done with it. That's the main reason, by the way, is he was painted as this bad guy so they could get rid of him. His son has worse policies than him. He has made it very clear. Number one, he has said if he comes to power, even transitional power, Iran will immediately recognize the state of Israel. That's actually something that his grandfather did too. Iran was the first country in the region in 1950, March of 1950, to recognize the state of Israel. So he's going to repeat that history. You do understand, Iran allied with Israel equals terrible economy through military industry for Western countries, right? If there is no Iran funding proxies to fight Israel, what are we going to do with all of our war equipment? Like, who are we going to sell it to? That's terrible policy. Second policy with him is he's going to go back to actually opening the industry of oil, gas, mineral, gold and silver, bronze, saffron, pistachio, opium, rice, and tea. I hope I'm not forgetting anything else. Yes, by the way, those are the natural resources of Iran, the country that 62% of its people live on the line of poverty. Is going to reopen that into the entire world as an industry. Again, there won't be sanctions. There won't be way around sanctions. There will be too much boost of economy inside the region and globally for the Western countries to have any control over any of that. That is the main direct reason that United States of America or England or France or Italy, for that matter, including Germany, are against Crown Reza Pahlavi. He has endorsement from 17 European countries, but UK, France, Italy, and Germany are not include those 17. Neither is US. By the way, I want to be very clear. I didn't say Trump. Before anybody gets like, hey, I'm talking US policy, not President Trump himself. I don't think President Trump genuinely knows anything about everything I'm saying right now. He has mentioned a few times he looks like a good guy, but I don't want to meet with him. But this is about US policy. I'm going to connect this back to something Mr. Sangari just touched on. And that was some of those communist Marxists who survived the Islamic regime and escaped, and then later came here, Mujahideen Khalq, MEK, that I've been covering for almost 10 years now. Michael knows about it. I've been heavily covering them lately. They have endorsement from 144 Republican sitting Congress members today. A Marxist Islamist group that survived the regime, went to Iraq, started working with Saddam Hussein against Iran, then joined U.S. military as alliance to get Saddam Hussein, then worked their way into our halls of Congress and got 144 Congress members, Republican only, endorsements right now. All of that is why Crown Prince Pahlavi is not a good candidate. All of that is why CIA would not arm Iranian people. On the second part you asked, yes, Mossad is not arming the Iranian people, but something people need to understand in America is we have Iranian Mossad agents inside Iran. And they will be activated when the time is right. They were activated before the war started. If you recall, if you go back 2-3 days before the actual war started this time around, you started hearing on reports like mine that some buildings are just blowing up. Who do you think?
There's no explanation.
All right. It's just like blowing up. Well, the Iran regime kept saying it was a gas leak. It was an electric shock. We knew who they are because, again, the Iranian Jewish and Iran-Israeli relationship goes way back to Cyrus the Great. So another myth we hear, Iranians chant death to Israel. No, Iranians don't do that. Islamic Republic of Iran's regime and their goons do that. We don't. Yes. Same thing with America. So with that being said, the internal relationship between Mossad and Iranian agents have never disconnected. I'm sorry. I think I went way too long. I'll stop talking now.
No, you're fine. And I just want to summarize what you said back to it, because really, like, this is good for the world, but bad for the military-industrial complex. Same with the oil reserves. People want to get their hooks into it, when in reality they should have the rights to sell their own fuel and natural gas on the world market, which will help decrease the price for everybody. But that means the big players won't get their hooks into it once again. So those are the only real reasons not to allow the Reza to return to power there. The people clearly want him, but it's the war machine and the powers that be that don't, because they don't want to leave a piece of the pie for the people of Iran. In reality, that's what they need. As you said, over 60% live below the poverty line. Even though this is a resource-rich country that's been getting robbed for 47 plus years, even longer than that. But they'll actually have control, they'll have autonomy, and they'll have the wealth to rebuild their country. Not to mention, having Iran as a real ally to the United States and Israel will also help destabilize other Islamic countries in the region. And I mean, again, I think this is all good for us, and it's good for the 90 million hostages that have been living under this Islamic dictatorship for 47 years.
Yes, and let's not mention, can you imagine a competition, open competition with Saudi Arabia's oil? We can't upset our ally Saudi Arabia now, can we? No, they've
ally.
been leading. All right, my face kind of did the air quote thing. My hands are busy playing with the stress ball because life is hard. But yeah, we can't go up against Saudi Arabia. A free Iran under Pahlavi could very well mean Saudi Arabia not holding us hostage with all of their deals. Because I know a lot of people think genuinely the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is such a moderate and we're so friends. No, they've been holding us hostages for 47 years. They got the oil, we got the weapons. It's an easy trade. If Iran goes back to being our ally, they can't get the deals they get today.
Bingo.
So, Sarge, your turn, buddy. Chime in here.
Yeah, look, for the United States, I got to tell you, especially under the current administration, if you read the National Defense Strategy, we're pretty as much as there's still a belief they really care about that region, we don't really care about that region. We do care about business ties, right? That's completely different than what you want to do strategically within the region or not. Because at any given time, I think we learn our lesson that that thing can flip on itself. Today they're your buddies. Tomorrow, you're infidel, and you're in another war. Um, there's one thing that people have to understand. That Trump understands the control of energy right now is very important, especially when it comes to our near peer fight with China. So we go into U.S. has 20% oil, right? We're independent. We go in, we change regime in Venezuela. We keep the same structures in, right? The Cubans that were in Cuba controlling Venezuela under a security structure, we didn't kill them all. We kept them there, and we said, okay, we're going to flip into what we have to do in Cuba in the future. Cuba has enough potash in it that for the next 150 years to 300 years, you could be supporting whatever you need within the energy sector. When it comes to the U.S., if we're able to finally have our hands in that particular area, especially in our backyard. So that's 50% of the oil right now that you have under control. And what happens? You go into the Middle East. 20% of the global oil is coming out of the Middle East from Iraq, from Iran. Now you have control of that. You're basically controlling 70% of the global oil market. And when it comes to what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz, the Europeans don't want to come to play. So, okay, you don't want to come to play. Guess what? I'm going to go ahead and insure the tankers. They're under my watch now. And Lloyd's of London, within a year, I'm going to bankrupt your ass. And then you and the Brits can go do whatever you want. The British have a more of an interest for themselves in the Islamic nations because that's where their bread and butter has been for the past 100+ years, and they do even care about Israel itself as what might be a future ally if that's the case in the long term, and they don't view it that way. So now take a look at what happened in under Obama, right? I've mentioned this before. People have to understand this. Wang Yi took on stage in the Brookings Institute and introduce China's vision for United States and China and how possibly for the two nations to be able to work together but not fight against each other in the long term, especially when China was looking and viewing what would happen with Taiwan. All our capabilities are sitting there from our industrial complexes run off of the chip technologies that are there from our satellites, from our energy sector to our iPhones. The issue becomes we thought that when Susan Rice took to stage at George Washington University, she was going to talk about how to counter China's vision, because in China's vision, U.S. was supposed to cede vast areas of Asia to the Chinese. And what was going to happen is U.S. was going to retreat within its borders, maybe concentrate internally in its own backyard, which in this case South America, and Europe, AU, and Russia were going to be the victor in Europe, and everybody would fight for the resources for future tech in Africa on an equal basis. What happens? Susan Rice talks about how to actualize that mission. Now, Obama, Trump 1, Biden, Trump 2, as much as Trump is countering against the near peer China to ensure that China doesn't go into Taiwan prior to 2030, the issue is that that same pattern of what was agreed upon is still moving forward. When I was called and my team to go talk to the State Department. Actually, we chose a date before Trump went on his first visit and his first tour to Saudi Arabia on the date that Sykes-Picot contract I ran out. That was an agreement, agreement that literally shaped the borders of the Middle East between France and Britain. Well, 25 years out from that, we've every country realized that there's going to have to be a new agreement for that region, because that region is volatile, it's not controllable. Having it basically be, at each other's neck actually is how things were moved through the region and how resources were controlled for the betterment of the East and the West and the North and the South. The issue became, we knew that it was going to be United States at that time and Russia. China comes in, establishes, of course, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which now Iran and Russia are part of, and India comes into that equation. So the fight that is taking place currently, the most important piece for this current administration is, if we are still executing that plan that was initially introduced by Wang Yi, and we have no choice but to get to a point where we have some deliverables to be able to allow a longer period of time for the United States to finally start building those chip technologies here, then we'll be in a better place. I'll use this as an example. I don't know if I've said it on your show before or not. I had a friend of mine from Israel who said, Israel is very important. We cannot have Iran attack Israel. I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. Here's how the U.S. members in the administration, I'm not saying Trump, others look at it, who do advise. If tomorrow you get up in the morning and here in Chicago, Illinois, you turn on your TV, you take your shower, you get your coffee, you sit by the TV, and suddenly you see that, oh my God, Iran has launched a dirty bomb. It has made it through the Israeli defense, and Jerusalem is gone. Okay, and Israel has retaliated with a nuke on top of Tehran. I said, what changes in your life? I said, nothing here, because your TV is going to be working, your government's in place, your military is intact, you're going to go to your work. A week later, you're going to have to sit and discuss the fact, maybe internally by yourself, because of your theological belief. If you're a Jew, what happened? How come the Messiah didn't come to save me? If you're a Christian, what happened? Jesus, how come you didn't return? Based on what Revelation may have said, as far as your interpretation of it, I would say. Or if you're a mullah and you're one of those Mahdi folks, where's the Mahdi? How come he didn't show up? But I said, if the same thing happens, you turn on the TV and China has taken Taiwan and Taiwan's gone and the infrastructure is destroyed, within a week, your satellites aren't operating, your civilization isn't working, your transformers aren't working. We're in a major battle where we have to absolutely literally go in and destroy, a nuclear power's capacity and capability. And you're going to have issues across the board in your civilized society, your medicine, and everything else. So you have to understand there's a reality to how some folks look at this. They don't care about that region. They don't really care about that, shape for what the region would look like in the future. Now, when it comes to the individuals like Pahlavi, Pahlavi's son, a lot of the folks in the current administration, I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I could care less. Whoever the people of Iran choose is up to them. A lot of them don't believe he has the capacity, capability to go in, even though he has a lot of followers, he might not have the network in like that 20 million Basiji, IRGC, Tide, market, bazaar network that's operating all the way from China to Russia to South America, to Africa, to Europe, that is tied within the European communities, that is tied, as it was mentioned by Anne, with the lobbyists that are really have their tentacles in on a lot of the Republican side. Those individuals, that 20 million can be flipped. As an example, if I'm a BCG, maybe I have a wife, a kid, maybe a couple of parents. That network is a network that is still operating the country of Iran. We go in and we kill all the top leadership. I always say to people, if they were worth it, the government would have, fallen apart the second they were gone. I know that they have strategically, from a tactical perspective, kind of pushed all the orders down to the lowest levels, but that network is still operational. So if I am somebody, let's say I spent 17 years in the Iran prison in Iran, I am been against the government. I've had family members who have been killed. I've been doing my best to be able to topple the government. I have a network that is on the ground right now, actually attacking, killing Basiji cells, Basiji commanders on the ground. I have guns. I have a network. I have money filtering in that's been coming in under the black market through Bitcoin operations, or coming in actually through the old Belt and Road Initiative process. Why would I want to suddenly get up and have somebody say, "Oh, by the way, I got a guy here who's from a former regime, but he's going to be your next leader, and he's going to be tied to Israel or others possibly, because that's what I want to impose on top of you." He may not like it, and that network may not be managed by individuals, even if you're surrounded with the best possible talent, every single Mossad agent possible, every single CIA agent possible, every possible uh, infusion of dollars, that individual may not be able to manage it. And if that person cannot manage it, then what happens? Then now you have another issue that you have to deal with for the next half a century. The problem becomes, what is going to be the long plan for that region when it comes to what the US final piece is, to control it in a way where we can counter against our near peer, in this case China, at the same time while we're strengthening ourselves at the homeland. The other piece I always recommend for folks to kind of think about: Israel and the United States are partners in the region, but that doesn't mean we believe in the same thing when it comes to strategic foreign policy for what is betterment for the United States or what Israel wants to do in the region. Israel would like to sign the Abraham Accord, an extension of that economic agreement, and would like to be able to be the future Taiwan in 10 years and be one of the biggest industrial multi complexes in the region, to be able to really have a stake to control that region for its benefit, to live in peace. The United States may not agree with that because of the fact we don't want to have individual nations in the country, in that region, that are going to be independent of what we would like to do on a daily basis. We would like to have them, if not partners, a little bit of a scale lower than us, for us to be able to control them. So those are the factors that have to be considered about why the United States does what it does and who it works for, with, or for, when it comes to trying to see a change in a possible future Iran.
Annie, were you going to say something? It looks like you were thinking, or
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree. I actually put out a Substack 2 days ago or 3 days ago. There's days are blurring, but I actually titled it something like, "Are we still in a unified war, or are we drifting?" I mentioned what um, Mr. Sangari just mentioned, that we need to realize, for some people who were writing me like, "Oh my goodness, Trump's doing this, Bibi's doing that," it seemed like a contradiction, and I tried to explain it that this is not contradiction. Is that sometimes you need to realize, when objectives are different, though allies in front line, but when objectives are very different, then you see different signals. I don't agree with a lot of it being publicized. I'll say that much. For
Mhm.
example, I was very disappointed when President Trump put out that Truth Social last week or Monday, I think, sometime, bashing Israel for hitting the areas of Pars, and then turning around and saying, if Iran hits Qatar, we're going to destroy that area. I was like, that's not something you publicize. Go
Mhm.
ahead and make the threat toward Iran, but do not bash Israel for doing something that is different than your objective. But bottom line is, yes, that is true. However, I do want to point out, I think it might be time for United States of America to reconsider how much control and how far they want to stretch their control. Because unfortunately, if US wants to continue controlling everything and everywhere, it's just going to turn into the exhausted, permanently exhausted grandpa that's useless.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
it might be a good idea for us to, at least for now, considering our own country is sinking.
Mhm.
Let's be honest, we're
Yep.
sinking. And if we don't focus on our own country because we want to finish what we started in Iran, and we want to finish building our border peace in Gaza, and we want to finish the 15-minute city in Gaza, what about America?
Mhm.
So personally, I think it is, and again, I want to, just in case Michael knows this, just in case your audience or you guys didn't know, from last year, 12 days war until today, I kept saying we should have stayed out of it. 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 I have always been against us getting involved with it. Like, let Israel go in and do their thing. It is my motherland, absolutely, but let Israel go in and do its thing. We have too much going on here for us to get involved with the war. However, now we are involved with it. I think we need to achieve our objective, which we don't know what it is because it was never mentioned, and then just come back home. Leave the rest of it be. We don't have to completely enforce our own preferred government there. I don't think that's a brilliant idea.
I got a
I,
question
I
for
I
you guys.
think
A lighter question. A lighter question for you. What is the gift that Trump got? He's got a big gift from. He's got a big gift from Iran, and
You mean the 4,000 kilometer missile that made its way and proved the point that Iran is a imminent threat to US and Europe? Is that the
no,
one you're referring to?
no. He said that he was going to bomb the energy uh,
well,
locations and stuff.
you
But
know
he
why
said
he
he's
said
got a.
that, though,
He
right?
said today. He said he's got. No, we. I have a big gift coming from Iran.
Mhm. Oh,
And I don't know what he meant. He didn't. You guys probably didn't see it. It was this afternoon.
I did not see it. No, to be fair, I wasn't following too much of news today. It was a I very happily I was doing a first biggest batch of signing books and shipping them out, but I don't know what the gift is. The only thing I can assume safely is, since they did the 5-day pause, and yesterday they were supposed to do their follow up meeting on the phone, and then I believe Thursday there will be an in person meeting. But I'm guessing he got his agreement or the terms he wanted discussed for the
He said
ceasefire.
that, yeah, he said that it shows that he's talking to the right people in Iran. That's all he said. He didn't get
Oh.
into any more of that. Sargis, you were going to say something before
Well,
I said
yeah.
that.
Uh, look. A lot of these
Mm,
agreements, it is not a conspiracy issue. Okay, a lot of these agreements were probably struck prior to combat operations even beginning. Okay, so we have to, there's a piece we have to do with combat operations. That's just a reality, and you're looking at probably by the end of next month, plus or minus a week. Okay, we have two MUs going in. I think you're gonna have Boxer go in maybe in a couple of days. I know that the rest is going to be there in the next couple of days. Uh, uh, and what's going to happen is you most likely are going to use them to take a hold of those islands that are in the Gulf. Okay, that happens. You have full control of the entire energy
mm,
sector. With Iran actually hitting the various different Gulf states. These Gulf states were, for the longest time, on the Iran side. By hitting them, you now unify them. But the biggest thing is you push them into the hands of
mm,
Saudi. So the biggest winner now comes out of it is Saudi. Saudi, after combat operations, everything's done, is gonna, finish up the Abraham Accord with Israel, expanding its, economic capability. Now is up to Turkey how it wants to respond. As you know, Iran has already cut off the gas to Turkey. Turkey itself has always fought to try to be the lead for Islam in the region. I had written an article, "Who Speaks for Islam," years ago, and you always had a competition between Saudi, Iran, Turkey, and Egypt. Iran gets marginalized when it comes to speaking on behalf of Islam, at least at the political stage, after the war is done, it could do whatever it wants for the Shia. We could care less, but they take a back seat. If Saudi becomes the main player when it comes to the energy market, then guess what? Turkey now will start getting squeezed slowly by Congress, on issues, given as the fact that it's, lead for Islamic Brotherhood, and Egypt has been already taken care of going back years ago, from the U.S. perspective with the relationship we have with them. So that's where the sage setter is, right? The fact that we say we're not going to bomb the energy sector because the people that Trump is talking to, and again, Iran says they're not talking to us. They're not lying. When Trump says we're talking to them, he's not lying. We're not talking to the state apparatus of Iran. We're talking to others. And those others still have their hands into that piece of the pie network that is 20 million strong, that is actually a controller, not just in Iran, but we're talking about globally. And the Iranian bazaar has roots all over the place for 47 years. And I think this is one of the issues again. We want somebody from the US side on the ground that we're talking to that can have that control. Hitting the energy sector of Iran will completely destroy the ability, shut off everything. Iran's complete ability to be able to operate will be put on the back burners. Look what happened. Iran hits the Gulf states. The Gulf states now would take them maybe 5+ years to even rebuild some of that energy infrastructure, so they have no choice. We literally pushed them by having Iran hit them into the hands of the Saudis, which is our main ally that we're trying to work in within the region. So I think the discussions of how this thing was going to play out had been done a while ago. But part of it was we had to have an agreement with the Russians too, right, about Syria, and whether or not there would be a flip when it came to Iran. And I think once we got the Russians on board to be hands off completely, then I think you're going to see a quick settlement, hopefully, on a maybe a year plus timeline when it comes to the issues of Ukraine and Russia war in Europe. Remember, I told you the Wang Yi proposal, power relations, that fight was taking place. I wrote that article on the Near East side in 2015. So, and then of course years later you have the war that is taking place in Europe. In the long term, I think Trump has gotten what he needs, at least for the next couple of years, through the midterms, to be able to maybe squeeze enough juice out of the out of China to be able to keep it in a position. If you looked at the gold market, usually during war, gold goes up, gold went down. Why? You want to talk about gifts? A lot of the gold, even under combat operations, was leaving Iran. Where was it going? I'll let you guys kind of speculate on that to understand why this is a business deal conducted using military operations.
Hmm, interesting. Do you, with the strait being affected, right, and affecting China and Russia, I mean, how are they not going crazy and just making our life difficult and just being more outspoken or not getting involved? I mean, what's going on with there?
They
Because I
made the
mean,
deal already. They made the deal. If they hadn't made a deal, they would talk. And by the way, one thing, Annie, and I want to have her perspective is more important than my strategic kind of look on military issues. But when initially we had put sanctions in the first term of Trump on Iran, we kept the port of Charbagh off the sanctions so that India could build a rail line into Afghanistan, bypassing Pakistan to put pressure on them. So he does those little things. It's not, I mean, Russia's selling Russian oil. China's still getting his deal. He would have squeezed China more, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to move our industrial uh, capacity building complex back to the United States. And the worry is, Annie, which is very important, uh, Israel wants to replace what Taiwan is, and the U.S. is never going to allow Israel to be that lead because we cannot allow all the global partners that we have to be better than us. They can be with us a little bit less, but they cannot be the ultimate. And if they're the ultimate, then we lose an entire vast array of ability to affect the region, which we're not going to allow that to ever happen from the U.S. perspective, regardless of who the president is.
Agreed. During the uprising, right as uprising started turned into a revolution, in mid-January, I put out a Substack again, and I put out three possible outcomes for 80 plus thousand Iranians dead. The first outcome was they will continue, and they might be fast enough to get this done, they being Iranian people, before foreign powers get involved. The outcome two was United States of America will get involved and hijack this revolution again and work out deals that will set them in where they need to be. Or number three, uh, there will be a drift between US and America when it comes to who's going to help people of Iran, who's going to help Iran. And I drew the differentiation, which is exactly everything you were just saying. And again, I guess there's nothing wrong with it. Personally, from my point of view, uh, I don't, I love that America is the power, but at the same time, I like for my fellow Americans to understand what you just explained. This is not about me personally. This is about many other people that face this. You have, for example, Matt Walsh, who sits on camera and says, these people shouldn't be allowed in America. Why do you think they're a bunch of barbaric third world country, illiterate people? We don't want them here. And my response is, Matt, you do realize civilization has started there. The reason they're illiterate to your eyes and third world and barbaric is because Western countries keep holding them down. Know the difference. The people aren't. I'm not. I mean, yeah, I've been here for 24 years, but 90% of my wisdom, culture, and heritage comes from where I was born and raised. For you to think that someone like me shouldn't come to America because of the third world country label, you need to realize there was no third world country until the first world countries decided to become first. So I completely understand and acknowledge what you're saying. Yes, at the end of the day, I even released the Substack defending Trump toward those who were saying he made a promise, he better deliver. I said, why are you expecting a very successful politician to become a humanitarian overnight? Why? Yes, Trump said help is on the way, but he didn't say help for whom and what. So leave him alone. Because I look at President Trump as a successful politician. And you don't, as a human rights activist, you don't become a very successful politician if you do things humanitarian aspect of things rather than policy. So I agree with everything you say. Yes. I was actually nodding and smiling because you were pretty much confirming everything I've been saying from late December of last year until 2 weeks ago. It's like, come on, guys, we need to be realistic. There won't be a fall of Islamic regime in Iran. It will be a fall of mullahs. US is still going to put in, phrased by President Trump himself 3 weeks ago, someone from inside who's more moderate, right? They're gonna have to continue keeping it where it's at. But someone from inside, as you said, someone who might be more reliable, who might listen more often, who might be less of a mullah, and still has the control over parts of IRGC, possibly, but not necessarily the Houthis or the Hamas or the Hezbollahs. So yes, it's not fair. It's not what's best for the entire globe, but it is what's best for US to stay the power, regardless of who's the president.
Yeah, look, it's is not a you gotta separate the emotions out of it, right? You gotta understand. Look, I don't blame China for wanting to be the number one power in the world. You know how
Oh
hard.
no, no, no! Hold on, before you finish your thought, I have been literally awarded by everyone on platforms and social media as the most unbiased reporter during all of this.
No, yeah, look,
I'm not getting any emotion involved.
no,
I'm
no.
actually
When I say you, I'm
dabbling down.
saying you personally, Anna. I'm talking about like in general when I'm talking to people that are
Ye-
listening. So let
yes,
me clarify that. I'm not saying you. When I say the word you, I mean you in general. You know, everybody,
the people.
the people. So you got to separate the emotions from it, and you got to understand the reality of what it is. And under this administration, you got to give them one credit. Go read the National Defense Strategy. It's very clear. Okay, here's what it is: U.S. interests. If it doesn't meet the U.S. interests, we're not really gonna pursue it or spend resources on it. If you do, it has to be a benefit to us in the long term. So people may say, well, no, it violates the concepts of freedom, democracy, this, that, or like we can't teach that to everybody. We learn a hard lesson in Iraq and Afghanistan with all the soldiers that went there, fought and died. And we're like, you know what, guys, God bless you all. You figure it out, but you're gonna figure it out under us still being in a leadership position. As I said, I don't blame China for wanting to be the number one global economy in the world. You know how hard it is to feed billions of people 3 meals a day, but I don't want it to be. I want it to be down on the hill, looking up at me while I control it. A lot of people still don't know that when we did the land lease program with the Brits, we knew Brits were in trouble in World War II. We squeezed them enough to where they had no option and choice but to literally allow us to be the controller of the sea passages. And the last check that the British gave us for the Lend Lease program was on March of 2020, the COVID year. They finally paid off their debt. But guess what? Today we're gonna make sure that they pay a price for where they are. And part of some of the stuff that we're doing, where it's making the Brits look pretty bad as far as from a information operation perspective, is because we know that the Brits are going to compete against us for Iran and for the Iranian market. Under Obama, when initially the JCPOA was struck, I was on the TV saying it was an economic deal more than it was a nuclear ballistic capability deal. And when the first companies from US went to meet with Iran were the US oil companies. When they left, the Europeans followed. And, we had British companies that were going in, meeting with the Iranian businessmen there, paying protesters on the street to stand at the bottom of the building, basically screaming and chanting "Death to America." And then the Brits were basically telling to the Iranians, "Look, your own people are screaming "Death to America. Why don't you go ahead and have the American companies strike a deal to come through our companies?" So they become basically a sub company to us, a subcontractor. And even Obama was like, you know what? I did the deal to save your ass, Europe, because you were completely going to fall apart. The global economy wasn't going to work, and you're going to be a burden on me. And now you turn around in the same breath and you try to stick it to me. I give another example. When we put a kibosh on the Iranians coming to the United States because of the visas, the one country that opened up the visa process to the sons and daughters of all those military officers that wanted their kids to study overseas from Iran was Britain. So Britain has educated the sons and daughters, given the diploma of the future generations of who might be the future military forces that are going to be controlling in Iran in the long term for the benefit of the British, not because of the benefit of the United States. So this is how countries, even though they're allies and partners, play the power game internally to ensure that they have a long-term control of the region. And again, I go back to the piece that I've talked about before. I understand we all see that Israel in the next decade can become that major regional controller in the Near East for the entire region. But what have you been doing? As soon as Ayatollah was killed, U.S. like, well, we didn't do the strike. That was the Israelis that did the strike. So the future Islamic nations, they're the ones you got to go, deal with when it comes to who killed your Ayatollah, made him an imam. When it comes to the issues of security, as much as this gonna, clean itself out, a lot of the initial strikes that Israel was hitting, where Trump was talking against Israel, saying you shouldn't have it this, you shouldn't have it that target. I'm not happy with what you did. You killed some of the people that you wanted to work with. These aren't just being thrown out there because Trump likes to talk. These are being thrown out there to make sure that if there's ever a focal point of the Islamists having to focus on who was the person or who was the individual or which was the country that really shares the blame, United States is not it. It is Israel foreign policy in the region. So as I've told my Israeli buddies, guess what? You're gonna have a fight on your hand every day, every month of your entire lifetime. And majority of your money is gonna go into being spent on security within the region, because even the Islamic world, if it might be weak today and it doesn't want to, lash out and hate you, tomorrow it will always remember that you're the reason that, as they would say, the region is as is. So you're going to have spend more of your dollars per capita on security than I have to while I'm building my capacity here, bringing economic security back here. You have a lot of internal and external foreign issues that you got to deal with, which I basically gave you this. I cooked this plate and I gave it to you. Now you have to deal with it. People have to understand this is how world polities work. And if you're a number one nation in the world, that's some of the steps you're going to take to ensure even your allies understand that they have to be beholden to you, not you to them.
Right. One of the reasons I actually been very clear on we need to make sure, we give credit when due, when we make it very clear that Khamenei was taken out and killed and everybody in that room by IDF and it wasn't us. Let's not walk around and say, we liberated people of Iran either, because you can't have your cake and eat it too. Which, by the way, who came up with that in English? It makes no sense. I always buy my cake and eat it. Like immediately I eat my cake. But anyways, and yes, that's why the objectives are very different. Israel is not going for modern reform who can control Israel. Israel is going to take him out. That's where the drift is, which I'm hoping this drift doesn't create issues, because that's another angle we need to look at. Is this drift going to be enough gap for us to have to stand against Israel? And I don't mean militarily, I mean policy wise. Or are we gonna, between the US and Israel, will there be a compromise where we can meet halfway and stop the drift before becoming an issue? And don't get me wrong, bringing emotion to it, 2021, I remember Israel had Hamas cornered. They were minutes away from done. They get a call from Biden for a ceasefire and said, they say yes. I got on camera. I'm like, why? Why do you listen to Biden? Finish him. You
Well,
are already the evils of the world. Like the it's skyrocketing anti-Semitism. It can't get worse than it is. Everybody blames Israel anyways. You might as well do what you need to do. As you said, avoid further fights inside the region from Islamic countries. But you know, we shall
Yeah.
wait and see
Well,
where it goes.
and especially right now, because unfortunately, there's people on both sides of the aisle trying to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Israel. And that isn't to say that Israel is always above criticism. There are legitimate things to criticize Israel on, but right now there is a concerted effort on both sides. And when you've literally got the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party, and then you've got these other groypers and other people on the right trying to exploit the division right now, and we can't have that going forward. Yes, there are some things to legitimately criticize them for here and there that happen, whether it's policy wise or things within their country or how they spend their money or how they spend our money or whatever. But this isn't a time for that. They are still a key ally in the region, and we do need to remember that. And we can't let people exploit this right now to try to drive that up and drive us apart, especially because, again, the future of both our nations are going to be at least somewhat dependent on that relationship going forward.
I got two questions before we're almost out of our late start time. Military question for you, Sargis, is you see in the news, right, the cluster bombs, which I have a hard time understanding. What it's illegal in a war. It's like, what the hell's illegal in a war? I mean, Jesus Christ. But are those truly quote illegal? And if they are illegal in a war, what the hell does that mean? And who gets punished? Can you explain that? The cluster bombs people see in the news. Oh, they're what I mean, they're harder to detect and more.
Yeah, it
Explain that.
does. Yeah, I mean, there's rules of engagement this nations have agreed upon, but look, international law means nothing unless the U.S. enforces it. There's
Mhm.
thousands of violations of international law every day. If U.S. ain't enforcing it, it's nothing. It means nothing. U.S. enforces international law where it affects its interest, and that's pretty much it. So, look, yeah, these cluster munitions are causing havoc. It's causing a lot of problems.
Isn't it the purpose of war, though? I mean, I mean, right? I mean, it's like rules for war. And when you get to that point where you're in your own mind defending your country, who gives a shit about the rules? At
Well,
least I don't.
look, you're not going to kill each other. I mean, Israel and Iran lobbing missiles at each other was never going to work. Right? That crap doesn't work. You have to literally hold ground. If you don't hold ground, you're not changing anything.
Mhm.
So that's the bottom line. The issue Israel had that they didn't have the force structure capability to hold ground. It just didn't. I mean, even right now, take a look at Gaza. I mean, you can't.
Mhm.
You take every Israeli and put them in Gaza, you may be able to hold it, and you just don't have that force structure capability. It's a small state, guys.
Mhm.
It's the size of a postage stamp compared to everybody else. U.S. has
Yeah.
that ability. U.S. has future tech capabilities that nobody can comprehend. I mean, one one of our special operators with 10 Iranians around him, having a aircraft with 4,500 pounds of munition fly from the United States and freaking calling it in and using AI capability for his bombers to drop it and destroy, battalions of Iranian military capabilities. That thing only exists in our systems. And there's certain things that we have that others don't. I could the best way I could tell you that the aliens are on our side. They're not on anybody else's side.
Mhm.
So when it comes to military operational capacity, nobody can touch us. We could shut off China tomorrow if he wanted to. Israel's trying to get there. It's still not there. And they may say we are there. The issue is here. If the United States doesn't do it and you decide to do it, you're on your own. But there's going to be consequences across the globe when you have to deal with those issues. And again, when we set up our partners in a way that we're going to be fair to you, we're going to work with you. But when your foreign policy diverts from our interest, guess what? Information operation wise, technology wise, and economically, we're going to make sure that you bear a price. There's a I don't know if you guys have a German Shepherd. Everybody says there's a one time in a lifetime of a German Shepherd where he bites the owner. He doesn't bite him to hurt him. He bites him to remind him that everything you were saying to me and everything you were ordering me wasn't that I was doing it because I was lesser. I could have tore your arm off anytime I wanted to. I just wanted you to realize that I did it because I'm a partner, but I can really bite you. And the
Mhm.
United States sometimes is that German Shepherd where it says, "Okay, buddy, let me kind of put a bite on you so you understand who's really in charge." And I think the nation states sometimes have to understand. And I ran for office here, Terry, and when I was running, this is going back in 2020. I did say to the Jewish community here that I was running, and I said, "Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. If we had removed all the Jews out of the state of Israel, this socialist state that has a lot of Jews living in it, and we had put them in Brazil." And we had taken Brazilians and put them in that little piece of strip, the Bible calls
Mhm.
Canaan. If they were burning Jews in ovens in Brazil, we wouldn't care. We only care about that piece of terrain right there. And who is a partner there that gives us access, that controls the entire Huron Valley that starts from the Golan Heights and all of Iraq sits into all the way into the Persian Gulf. So it's might be blunt, but people have to understand these realities before they go knock on the door and say, hey, we should be partners because we are Judeo-Christian, we love
Mhm.
each other, we have the same perspective. Yeah, you do, but when my economic interests and my security interests and my country's interests go against what you are looking at for your benefit, and
Mhm.
we cannot meet, my meat would be more important than yours. If tomorrow the Christian Assyrians decide, well, you know what, the hell with this, we want to have our own little piece of property here, we want to have our own little nation and land, and if it doesn't meet U.S. interests, the first drone that's going to fall on the Christian head is going to be from the United States. Because guess what? You are getting into an area where you're affecting my interest to what I want to do. And Israel does the same thing, when it comes to what it wants to do within the region and who wants to work with. We're partners, but at the same time, we have diverging beliefs and ideologies, and our wants and desires in the long term for us to remain number one is the main priority over anything else that might exist to include international laws, the issues that are discussed in the Bill of Rights and our Constitution. And keep in mind, Iran doesn't have a constitution like we do. So that piece of property there most likely is going to have to be run by somebody who can control multi force structures on the ground for the benefit of a good settlement in the long term that still keeps the bazaars moving and has everybody making money in the process.
I like the way you said it about running for Congress. You said I ran for Congress.
Yes, there you go.
Iran, not Iraq. Ah, it's a joke. So last question. Last question. When do you guys think we might see some of the people? This is for both of you guys, right? Uprising in Iraq. Will we see them? Are they gonna start fighting back? Do they see some light at the end of the tunnel? Are people gonna come together and try to, obtain their freedom regardless of this geopolitical bullshit that we've just been talking about, right? What are your thoughts? And that's the last question, and we'll wrap it up after that.
Um, that is a question. It has a lot of depends next to it. At the moment, no, because bombs are dropping. Are we talking about after either this war is concluded or there's a ceasefire in place? Again, depends. Is there going to be a ceasefire? U.S. is going to pick someone from inside the government who doesn't wear the turban to be the new leader. Yes, absolutely. People are going to come right back out. They're going to take on the streets. The problem with it, again, they have lost momentum at the moment, so it might take them a minute to regroup, reorganize and come out. If we go for a ceasefire, Israel doesn't. No, there are still bombs dropping. But bottom line is, as long as in any shape or form of any sect of Sunni, Shia, Wahhabis, if there is going to be Islamic government inside Iran, you'll continue seeing this uprising. Yes, absolutely, 100%, no question about it. People of Iran, majority of people of Iran are not going to bow to another Sharia constitution or Islamic government.
Sargis.
Yeah, I think part of it is just how everything's laying out on the battlefield. We've pretty much done what were on our military objectives. We're around, I think the last number I heard was around 76% or plus. I don't know. You have to listen to the Pentagon briefings. Um, where we might be. I think with the Muse going in, he's delaying it, right? Because he said, "Don't come out until I kind of set the stage." The Boxer and Tripoli are going in. You're gonna probably take those islands. Once those islands are taken, and we know that we have secured the ability of moving everything through the Strait of Hormuz under our protection, under our insurance capacity. And if we do not hit those electrical grids, then it's going to be time that, okay, guys, we've killed all the first level, second, even the third level capacity. Now it's up to you. If you want to come out and you want to go ahead and take to the streets, and that taking to the streets may be based on the internal fight, as far as who we're talking to and their ability and capacity to control what is happening in the region. Look, I know that the Israelis had looked at, let's divide the damn thing into five pieces with a weak central government, with somebody who's been good to us and who's an ally to us. And then if ever an issue comes up, let these factions just bleed each other out. And it makes life easier for me. I don't have to bother with a unified capacity to hit me all the time. Makes sense. But from the U.S. perspective, we rather keep it as a whole. That way, I can work with one entity and a little bit of a strong entity that allows me the capacity to break those deals that I want in the future with Russia, even my near peer China, when it comes to what Iran has to offer in the long term. On my benefit, without me directly having been tagged as a person who's actually chosen the next leader of Iran. So I think, like I said, I think by the end of April, plus or minus a week, once we finish those military force structure, operations, you're probably going to see at least some people come out. I know that Annie is not a fan of the Mujahideen. I'm not saying that you should be, but right now, they've been working on the ground. They have a multi-force structure. They've been hitting at the lower
Oh,
level.
no. I'm sorry.
Running
Not
some-
even a dream of Mujahideen will ever step into Iran. And I don't say that. It's not, by the way, it's not that I'm not a fan of them. I am absolutely an enemy of MEK, Mujahideen al-Khalq, for the fact that they are a Marxist Islamist group. They have blood of Iranians, Iraqis, and Americans on their hand. I have extensively reported by showing the proof that MEK under current leadership, Mayam Rajavi was the lead back then. She's still the lead. So was Masoud Rajavi under the same leadership. So nobody can claim, well, those who committed it died already. No. Under the same leadership, Mujahideen has killed Americans, have killed Iranians, have killed Iraqis, and they will continue killing if that means holding power. So it's not that I'm not a fan of them. Actually, they're probably number two, if not number one, enemy. And I expose them every day. And trust me, if US even imagine or even think of trying to put MEK in power in Iran, that is when you genuinely, for first time in the history, will see the Iranian people start killing American soldiers.
No, we're
Mark
not.
my words.
Look, that's not the push. I want people to understand that it's not the U.S. is trying to push them, but right now they have the guns on the ground and they've been providing targeting support for us. So
They did that with Iraq too. So what?
yeah,
Just because they're listen, we have had jihadists. It says I do need to run, so let me plug my book while I go there. The Architecture of Jihad is the book I just released. I won't go into too much detail because we're out of time. The reason I wrote this book is exactly what just came up. Just because someone helps you to save their own skin doesn't mean they're your friend. And Mujahideen Khalq, also known as MEK, has proven that historically, when Saddam Hussein saved them from the regime of Iran, they escaped because mullahs in Iran were executing MEK members 800 every morning, badges of hundreds. They escaped. Saddam Hussein gave them safe haven in Iraq, plus millions of dollars to build their Ashraf camp there. When it came down to it, they sold Saddam Hussein and sided with the US. When it came to it, they sided with France and started selling America out. I don't care how much they're doing whatever. By the way, I wouldn't believe a word MEK says as far as providing support on the ground in Iran. They don't have the networks they had in 79 or 80, or for that matter, until 85. When they betrayed Iranians, when they showed the tunnels and the path to Saddam Hussein to invade Iran during Iran-Iraq war, MEK died for Iranians. Done. Nobody's operating for them. Even if we believe their lie for a minute, I don't care how much they're helping US military, they have no place inside Iran ever again. If we love them so much, if they're so great, let's hire them across America to help us with the strategy. That's as far as they will ever get any momentum from Iranians. And again, I don't say this because it's my opinion. This is my research. I have dedicated over 10 years of my life to MEK, their past, their present, their future, and inside Iran, Iranians' feedback about MEK, Mayam Rajavi, and Masoud Rajavi. So good for them if they're. Listen, U.S. is known to use anybody. I believe the guy who kind of did the attack close to Thanksgiving in Washington, D.C., wasn't he one of the Afghans who helped us in Afghanistan?
Yes, he
We
was.
use whomever we can use, as you said, for our benefit. Doesn't mean they're our allies, doesn't mean they're our friends. That's exactly why the Architecture of Jihad, I'm gonna hold it up. This book explains exactly that. Stop believing because somebody helped us one day or some neighbor goes to bar with you and has a beer, then they're the moderate good Muslim who are not going to blow themselves up when the call comes for it in many different formats. I'm kind of generalizing it. But yeah, that's for MEK. Mm.
and to caveat on what Anna is saying, again, I'm not saying this group is a good group. Trust me, everything you just said, 100%. I was there. They were not alike, especially what they did with supporting the Iraqi government when Iraq attacked Iran. With that said, I want folks to understand the complexities of who the next leader is going to be. He's going to have to understand who these people are. Can I work with them or not? He needs to understand who the Baluchis are. Can I work with them or not? He needs to know who the Kurds are. Can I work with them or not? He needs to know who the Arabs are. Can I work with them or not? Who the Turkish Azaris are. You're gonna have somebody who can manage these people. That's 92 million folks. Those 92 million folks are gonna grow in numbers, folks. I told you the Basiji network is 20 million that controls the bazaars. Guess what? It took Iraq 10 years, a decade to get to 20 million added to their numbers, and these
Oh,
numbers are going to grow. So what? And I'm glad we finished with this point. You have to have a guy on the ground that can control this, and we may not know who that is. It might be a network, but more likely it has to be a network person from the inside. Hopefully it's somebody that the people of Iran will settle on. At the end of the day, they're the ones who have to make that decision. None of us here in the United States.
you said the Belushis. What are the Italians doing over in Iran? Huh? I didn't know.
Not those Beluchis, the other Beluchis.
Well, thank you guys. This was interesting, historical, educational, military, political conversation.
And it was a
Yeah.
pleasure. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you both for being here. And again, guys, go out right now. You can get Annie's new book, Architecture of Jihad, on Amazon right now. It's only $25. You want to learn what's really going on and have a breakdown understanding of the politics, the political Islam, this death cult that's strangling Europe and clawing its way into the United States right now. Go get that book. If you want an autographed copy, you can get it on liveuptofreedom.com. Yeah, you just said you were signing them all day today, right?
I was. Today was the, I think, longest hours I had to spend, which was all delightful to sign them, package them, label them, and leave them at the door for USPS to pick up. So all the orders that were placed until 4 p.m. Eastern time today, all your books are on their way. I appreciate all your orders. I'm very grateful for your support. I should say, because of all the support we have received in only 3 days since the release of the book, The Architecture of Jihad is now #1 new release on Amazon, and also #5 on top 10 books across Amazon, all platforms in history of Islam. So I'm grateful and humbled for your support.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Congratulations. Well, thank
Very
you,
good.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Yeah,
folks.
thank you
God bless.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you both for being here. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news, the main